Hello everyone. As a fun, educational ASMR video, I thought I'd go over the major components of a computer and explain them in non-technical terms through analogies. I've lived with several computer scientists over the years in college, and I've learned a lot just by osmosis. And last summer I built my own gaming PC. That's just to say that I've got a functional knowledge of PC components, but not a real technical, fundamental knowledge of them. So, if I've got any viewers out there who are intimately familiar with the technical functionality of these pieces, I welcome your corrections if I make an error when speaking about it. Still, please remember that this is just a basic explanation by some analogies. So, I hope that you might find this useful in the future, particularly in identifying the parts of your computer that might need upgrading. I'll be using two different sets of analogies when I think they apply: an office workspace and the human mind. Now, in general, a computer breaks down into 8 different components: a case, a motherboard, a processor, the memory, a hard drive, a graphics card, a cooling system, and a power supply. Firstly, there's the case. The case is the hard covering into which all the components are set in a specific configuration. Now, a case serves 4 different purposes: protection, portability, capacity, and cooling assistance. Your computer case is like the room in which you work. Choosing a computer case is like making sure that you're working in a good area. Is it well lit? Are you cramped? Is the temperature comfortable? Although you could certainly work in those kind of conditions, it's not ideal, and you sure wouldn't want to do so for very long. Next is the motherboard, sometimes lovingly abbreviated to MOBO. The motherboard is the core of the computer. It's what every other component connects to, and it determines the overall capabilities of the computer. Your motherboard is kind of like the soul of the computer. You know how you could change everything about yourself? You could become smarter and faster and stronger. You could be kinder or braver, more compassionate, but you'd still be you. Your identity does not change, just all the things about you. A motherboard is much the same. You could switch out every single component that I'm going to talk about and upgrade it, and then put it back in, but as long as they all connect to that same motherboard, it will be the same computer. Every person's soul is unique, and the motherboard is, in a sense, unique as well. Whenever you register a piece of software for your computer, it's your motherboard which it notes. That's what determines it. This is why you may have to repurchase programs like Windows or Microsoft Office, even if you move your hard drive over to a new computer, because according to them, you've just got an old piece in a new computer. They don't recognize it. Next is your processor. It's sometimes known as the CPU, or Central Processing Unit. The processor determines the overall speed of most of the mundane actions that your computer performs. Things like booting up, browsing the internet, checking email, and writing your documents are all very processor-intensive tasks, although the hard drive has something to do with it, but we'll get to that soon. In the office analogy, it's your ability to write. How fast can you write things? How fast can you move your pen? How fast can you get stuff done quickly? In the sense of your human mind, your processor is your left brain, the analytic side. It's your IQ, the measure of your ability to process information quickly and accurately. Now we come to the memory, which is more commonly called RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory. Now, this one's a little more complicated to explain technically, but it's basically your workspace. When you have a lot of things open at once, then it uses RAM, even if they're not using the processor just then. A computer with a lot of RAM can have plenty of windows open at once. I have 8 gigabytes of RAM, for example, so I can just easily have 4 internet browsers, my email, a movie, a music player, and a word processor open all at once. If I had less RAM, I would have to close some of these things before opening new ones. Probably the movie. That's probably the greatest RAM sink. In an office, your RAM is kind of like the size of your desk. The more RAM you have, the more things you can have out on your desk without it being a problem. If you only had a little RAM, you'd have a very tiny desk, and you'd have to put things away before you take new ones out. In your mind, RAM is kind of like your ability to multitask. Can you listen to music while typing and carrying on a conversation all at once? Then you could say that you've got a pretty good amount of mental RAM, if you wanted to make a computer joke. Next is the hard drive. Now, there are two kinds of hard drives. There's conventional and solid-state hard drives. I'm not going to go much into the difference here, but suffice it to say that a solid-state drive loads everything much, much faster, but it holds less information and is more expensive comparatively. Your hard drive stores information and loads it into your RAM when it is being used. Now, the larger the hard drive, the more information it can hold. And the speed of most activities is limited by how fast they can load as well as function. This is why I said if your computer is slow to boot up or check emails, it could be your hard drive too. In your mind, your hard drive is your memory. Now let's not confuse this with RAM. This is two different words which mean totally different things. But your memory is your workspace in a computer. A hard drive is like your memory in the mental sense. So a person with a large hard drive would remember a lot of things, and someone with a fast hard drive could recall things very quickly. Conversely, a person with a very small hard drive would be very forgetful, and someone with a slow hard drive would have to be, what's it called? And they'd take a bit to remember anything. In an office, your hard drive is like your filing system. You have to take things out and put them on the desk to use them, then file them back away when you're done. This is like a hard drive loading something into the RAM to be used, and then the RAM putting it back when you're done. Next is a fun one, the graphics card. Now the graphics card, or video card if you wish, determines your computer's ability to create images quickly and completely. This is most heavily seen in video games and media creation, like rendering a 3D model or a movie. A normal processor can only get you so far in making a video game run. Eventually, a graphics card is going to be necessary to play it fluidly. In your mind, a graphics card is like your right brain, your creative side, your imagination in short. Now the better your graphics card, the more vivid the pictures you can come up with in your head. And then there's the cooling system. Now, pretty often a case will come with one, but it's still an essential part of your computer's performance. You see, just as your body produces heat as you go about your activities, and especially you can heat up when doing something really exerting, so does a computer. Some components, especially the graphics card, generate intense heat when they work hard, and they need to be cooled or they can damage themselves. This is where the cooling system comes in. The most common type is a system of fans which move air over the components and then move that heated air out of the case. This allows your computer to keep running for longer, and if your cooling system is really good, like mine, it can actually lower the ambient temperature of the room a little bit over time. In an office, a cooling system would be, the air conditioning. No one can function over time if they're overheating, and a comfortable temperature helps keep you working longer in comfort. And then lastly is the power supply. There's nothing complicated here. A power supply provides electricity to the rest of the computer at the proper rate and ensures a steady flow overall. The capacity of a power supply is determined by its wattage. That's W-A-T-T, like a watt. Each component of the computer consumes a certain amount of power, which is measured in watts. When you want to choose a power supply, all you have to do is add up all the power consumption values of the components. So say it comes out to be 600 watts. That's how much all the components use. Then you choose a power supply which supplies more than that amount, like a 650 watt power supply. Now in the mind analogy, I suppose the power supply would be your diet. The brain requires a lot of chemical energy to work, and some foods provide better energy than others. So when they talk about brain foods like fish, it's kind of like saying it's supplying a higher wattage to your brain. Your brain works better on that. So, thank you for watching. I hope this was educational and relaxing for you. I'll upload an MP3 of this to my MediaFire account for you to download if you'd like. The link will be in the description. Please let me know if you have any suggestions for future videos. I'd like to hear your feedback. Was this fun? Was it educational? Was it relaxing? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Happy tingles, everyone.